Hello, everyone out there in Radio Land. It is once again that time of the week. What time of the week is it? Well, it's that time of the week where we dig underneath the headlines. We analyze the news internationally, nationally, statewide, and right here in our backyard of Kalamazoo from a critical leftist lens, and quite generally call out the establishment on its BS. This is the Hoodrat Strategist radio program, only on 89.1 WIDR Kalamazoo, your only source for political revolution. So, as always, the following thoughts, views, and opinions are not necessarily those of 89.1 FM, WIDR Kalamazoo, or Western Michigan University, no matter how dope or insightful they may, in fact, turn out to be. Oh, hold on just a second. I think that might be a co-host. Never mind, I guess I'm just hearing things. But I want to welcome, yes, all of the students are back here in Kalamazoo. Welcome, welcome. I was out there at Bronco Bash yesterday. Seems like we got a new crop of young people out there in the community. I want to let y'all know, just here at Western Michigan University, there are lots of very important social justice groups that you can get yourself involved with. I talked to a couple of them the other day. There's a couple of LGBTQ A plus focused groups on campus. Talked with the folks over at Outspoken. Talked with the folks at the Western chapter of the LGBTQ rights organization. Sorry, I had this all written down, but I must have left it somewhere in my scattered brain. I talked to a group that devotes itself to helping refugees resettle. And a couple of groups I did not see, but I know they are active on campus. There is a chapter, or at least there was last year, of the Young Democratic Socialists of America. There also was, at least last year, a chapter of the International Youth and Students for Social Equality. Where they are at this year, I'm not particularly certain, but if they're still organizing on campus, I'll be the first to let you know. But I'll let you just know, all the students coming back, find some social justice orgs on campus here to get involved with. I know that y'all are going to be super, super busy with your studies. I remember I'm about 10 years out of school myself. But I do remember the grind of going to, 40 credit semesters here. No, 25 credit semesters. Yeah, 40 credits would just be unreasonable. That'd be, oh man. Actually, there might be some of y'all out there doing that. And if so, oh my goodness, take a break. Sit down for 5 seconds, please. But anyway, as I said, there are a lot of really great social justice organizations here on campus and in town that you should get involved with. I'd also highly recommend to all the students, unless you are really, really involved in the politics of your hometown. I totally understand that. A lot of y'all want to fill out absentee ballots for your local representatives from outside of Kalamazoo. But if your heart is more here in the city of Kazoo, then that hometown of yours, I would encourage all of you, if you so decide, go register to vote. It's easy to do. There'll be a lot of stuff on campus about it, but I know you can always just go down to City Hall and fill one out. And I believe you could potentially also go online and order a form, and it'll be sent right to you. Yeah, because this is going to be a very important election locally, and students get registered up. You're going to be helping decide, help Kalamazoo pick out a brand new mayor, and there's going to be 3 open seats in the city commission. So yeah, this is a very important election. So if your heart's here in Kalamazoo, make sure that your heart is also registered to vote here. So with that little PSA out of the way, let's go ahead. We're going to talk about a lot of stories on our plate today. Why don't we start with actually some good news? Hooray, because we've got a lot of dire stuff coming up ahead. But we're going to start with something that's pretty good to hear. This is an article from MLive. It was published earlier. Newly appointed Kalamazoo County Commissioner flips District 6 seat. This is Jen Aniano, who was sworn in today. She's Kalamazoo County Commissioner. Her name might be a little bit familiar for some of y'all who live in the area. But I'll go ahead and read from the article first real quick. This is by Lindsay Moore. The newest Kalamazoo County Commissioner, a Democrat appointed Tuesday to the board's vacant District 6 seat, flips the previously GOP-held seat. Commissioners met Tuesday, August 27th, to interview 5 finalists for the seat left empty when Republican Ron Kendall resigned earlier this month. Ultimately, commissioners appointed Jennifer Aniano to fill Kendall's seat. A week earlier, the board selected the following candidates from those who applied for the opening: Jennifer Aniano, Vince Carahale, Sarah Kane, Tom Novak, and Raymond Shoup. Each finalist was given 20 minutes Tuesday to answer questions about their experience, their priorities for the county, and how they define the role of a county commissioner. After the interviews, Aniano was appointed by a 6-3 vote. Commissioners Michael Seals, a Democrat, and Commissioners John Gisler and Roger Tunier, the board's lone Republicans, voted against the decision. Commissioner Paul Haig, a Democrat representing District 2, was not present. The new commissioner was sworn in during the meeting and now represents District 6, which is comprised of Cooper Township, Richland Township, and Ross Township. During the board's deliberation, Commissioner Mike Seals, a Democrat representing District 4, voiced concerns that Aniano's commitment to the Kalamazoo Education Association, where she serves as the local teachers union's vice president and board chair, could be a time conflict. Seals pointed to Haig as an example of union commitments conflicting with county commissioner responsibilities outside the usual 2 Tuesday meetings a month. Vice Chairperson Tracy Hall and Commissioner Meredith Place, a Democrat representing District 11, pushed back on the idea that Aniano's union commitments would hinder her ability to serve, citing examples of commissioners with similar obligations who manage their time. It was also discussed that Carahale and Novak both ran for the District 6 seat previously. This was a distinction both Seals and Gisler said they favored during the discussion. During public comment, Carahale presented the board with a petition of support carrying 47 signatures from local community leaders. But it was Aniano's answers about viewing the county commissioner's impact as widespread that impressed the board. An English teacher at Loy Norris High School, Aniano said she brought a different perspective to issues county commissioners influence, such as food insecurity, homelessness, and mental health services. Seeing those issues through the lens of students and families in Kalamazoo Public Schools gave her insights into the repercussions of poverty, she said. Even though you don't deal with educational policy, there are things that that the county does that supports our kids, and that's really important to know the outcome of that support and know where we're lacking and need more, Aniano said. When asked if she intended to run to keep the seat in 2020, Aniano confirmed that she would run to keep the seat as a Democrat. In her application packet, she noted she had intended to run against Kendall had he finished his term and sought re-election. Aniano also ran as a Democrat for the District 63 seat in the Michigan House of Representatives in 2018, losing to Republican State Representative Matt Hall. By the way, we were talking a bit about her during that election run. She was running as a very strong progressive Democrat, kind of, I'd say somewhere between, that left progressive and not an overt member of, say, like DSA, but Still, she ran a good campaign. Ended up, she didn't win, and it was a substantial margin, but she did end up pulling a pretty substantial vote get. I think it was like 40%. Again, I don't remember the exact number off the top of my head, but it was, she did perform very well in what people typically see as a predominantly conservative district. Now she's going to be serving on county, so... Going on in the article, during the meeting in which commissioners reviewed candidates, Commissioner Roger Tunier, a Republican representing District 7, suggested only considering Republican candidates to fill the former Republican-held seat. The motion was rejected down, in part because applicants were not required to disclose their political affiliation when applying for the vacancy. The appointment of Aniano gives Democrats a 9-2 majority on the board. Democrats held only a slim 6-5 majority after the 2016 election. That majority was reduced to a 5-5 tie when Democrat Kevin Wardelman resigned after moving out of District 2. The 2018 election strengthened the Democrats' majority to 8-3, which became an 8-2 majority after Kendall's resignation. So that actually, I want to make it very clear. That does have a lot of resonance for us here on the county level. Paul Haig is my particular county representative, and he's been doing a very good job. Unfortunately, I will be full transparency. I haven't really been making it down to the county commission meetings as much as I would like to. And I will say one thing to Mike Seal's concern about time management. I think. For all of us who are organizers, all of us who are have jobs and all this, it's something a lot of the prospective commissioners are going to be looking forward to, city commissioners in our next election. It's always difficult juggling all of the various balls that we have to juggle, but being able to serve, while representing, unions or being a community organizer, etc. It also means that you have a grounded perspective on what is going on in your community, and you don't kind of become insulated from that by, devoting all of your time to city commission work. Yes, it means you got a heck of a lot more work to do at the end of the day, and that's nothing to shrug off. But I think it's also critically important that people understand maintaining those connections and responsibilities in the community can also make you a better representative. Just make sure you take some time off. That would be my advice to Miss Aniano. Make sure you take some personal time. Commit to some self-care. I myself, this is some good advice for everyone. Even with my busy schedule, I always slot off at least one day a week for me time to do nothing, to have fun, etc., etc. That would be my advice to Ms. Jen Aniano. And again, congratulations for becoming the newest Kalamazoo County Commissioner. So with that, now let's move into some really bad news. Oh man, while we're talking about local stuff, it's just I wanted to start y'all off right because we've got some really bad news coming ahead. I'm gonna be talking about David Koch in a second, which I guess is good news, but it's going to be a real reality check about what that man did while he was alive. And how he's basically destroyed. It's very much his fault that we are nearing the climate apocalypse. It was, the Koch brothers and their various foundations and think tanks that strategized on how to bamboozle much of the country into believing that climate change is fake news, which has brought us to a very desperate point here in human history. And again, we'll talk a little bit about, we talked about the Amazon a little bit last week, but it's perhaps one of the biggest stories of our lifetime, and it would behoove me to dig into it yet again. But again, let's start at some local bad news. And this is some people who, just an individual who is just reading this story makes your blood boil and just makes you so outraged that somebody from the community could do something like this. but it didn't get a whole lot of play when it dropped last week, so I wanted to talk about this story, and in particular, talk about some of the really bad implications from this that I think a lot of people aren't necessarily realizing. So this article is published August 22nd. Former Kalamazoo diocese worker defrauded immigrants she pledged to help. This is written by John Tunison. And it reads, a former Kalamazoo diocese worker has been indicted for allegedly defrauding the immigrants she was supposed to be helping. Monica Karina Mazzei, who also went by Karina Pugh, has also indicated, has been indicted on a charge of wire fraud. Federal prosecutors said Mazzei was employed by the Catholic Diocese of Kalamazoo's Immigration Assistance Program. Her job was to help people and their relatives apply for visas, work permits, permanent resident status, and citizenship. Instead, prosecutors say she collected fees from certain clients and never processed their paperwork between 2015 and 2019. Just how morally reprehensible that is. Not only you're just taking people's money, this paperwork is very critical. It's very important. It helps immigrants stay in this country and helps keep ICE off their backs. Which again, this is actually going to be talking about ICE a little bit later. According to a U.S. attorney, she accomplished some of the alleged fraud by requesting blank checks or money orders from clients. She wrote, quote-unquote, U.S. Department of Homeland Security in the payee line of documents she used as receipts, but then wrote her own name on the actual check. She then deposited the money in her personal accounts, prosecutors said. Mazzei, an immigrant herself, came to the United States from Ecuador and became a naturalized citizen in 1999. Mazzei was given an opportunity to live the American dream herself, according to a written statement from U.S. Attorney Andrew Burge, but she cashed in the dreams of others to line her own pockets. Officials with the Catholic Diocese of Kalamazoo, in a statement issued Thursday, August 22nd, said they fired the worker in March when they first learned of the potential fraud. This past March, when diocesan officials discovered evidence of potential fraudulent activity, we dismissed the employee and immediately alerted local law enforcement and began distributing notice of this to outlets that reached potential affected parties. Additionally, we alerted the public through our April 18th news release so we could heighten awareness to those individuals who may have been negatively impacted, according to the statement. The Diocese of Kalamazoo has a long-standing commitment to assist immigrants seeking a legal pathway to citizenship through its Immigration Assistance Program. The diocese stands ready to assist in finding just and equitable resolutions for the victims of fraud in this matter. So nothing can really get to just how morally reprehensible these actions were, especially from somebody who's a fellow immigrant, to use your position to scam people and take their money. People who are desperate, people who are very much in need of assistance. There really aren't words for just how awful that is. It'd probably be something with a lot of expletives, but there just is not really much you can say about that, just other than just how awful and horrific it is. But I also wanted to call out the diocese in particular. They released a statement about this, and on their Facebook. And one of the things they said, we continue to urge anyone with information in regards to this matter to contact Homeland Security Investigations and Kalamazoo Department of Public Safety. They put out the statement without really reaching out to the immigrant community or the organizers who support undocumented folks. This puts them in direct danger. When you contact Homeland with information, that goes to the federal government, and in turn could also go to ICE. The problem is this woman, she invoked the U.S. Department of Homeland Security to write these fraudulent checks. So that means they can get involved in the investigation. Let's step back and figure out what that really means. One, the diocese should not have told people to contact Homeland because Homeland, again, works with Immigration and Customs Enforcement. This woman, she had access to records of hundreds of immigrants over the number of years that she was scamming them and defrauding them. What does that mean? This means investigators, who could be from the Department of Homeland Security, could be from Immigration and Customs Enforcement, could potentially have access to records of hundreds of undocumented people in our community. Again, that's kind of a worst-case scenario, but that's what we're looking at. And that's what the actions of this woman, whether she meant this or not, this is what she could be responsible for. Basically serving up the most vulnerable members of our community on a platter for the fascist organization known as Immigration and Customs Enforcement. My recommendation, everybody out there, if you're as enraged, worried, terrified, concerned about your immigrant neighbors as I am after hearing this news, and particularly after I explained some of the long-term implications of this to you, there are ways you can get involved. There are ways you can help. Movimiento Cosecha Kalamazoo is an organization in this community that works to protect undocumented people. They are also, right now, starting up a rapid response here in Kalamazoo, rapid response to ICE, which is basically supposed to be kind of a community watch, neighborhood watch, to protect our immigrant neighbors against enforcement from ICE. You can get involved with that. Get involved with that program. I guess I wouldn't even necessarily call it a program. Well, like I said, it's like a neighborhood watch. But we need they need lots of people. They need eyes and ears on the ground. Because again, like I said, I've talked about this on prior programs. ICE doesn't do a lot of mass raids in Kalamazoo, especially after there was a lot of public attention on them. They came into our town about 2 years ago and were basically ran out of town, more or less. They still do raids here. They're quiet, they're discreet, they usually go after single individuals. But this really does open the door for them to do more strong-armed enforcements and to do large-scale raids. And with that being on the table, it is imperative that people, all of us out here who are outraged at what is going on right now, the concentration camps on the border, those of us who really truly believe never again means now, those of us who do not want our neighbors to be kidnapped by the government, please get involved. Sign up on that list. Again, Movimiento Cosecha Kalamazoo, look them up. You can figure out a way to find out how to get involved with rapid response. Again, this is really disturbing news. And it's really time. We got to step up. We got to step up, folks. Our neighbors are counting on us. So with that, I think I'm going to go ahead. We're going to take a quick little break. Come back. We got lots more news. I think we'll go ahead and broaden out to the international level and talk about the legacy of one Mr. David Koch. Y'all listening to the Hoodrat Strategist radio program only on 89.1 WIDR Kalamazoo, your only source for political revolution.
Hey, this is Rookie Plenty. You are tuned to 89.1 FM, WIDR, Kalamazoo. Stay tuned.
Depression can take many forms. It can feel like static in your brain, or as if everything around you has lost meaning. It can debilitate even the strongest of people. 89.1 WIDR is here to tell you that there is help and a way to improve mental health. WMU offers counseling for all students in the greater Kalamazoo community at Syracuse Health Center. There is no need for an appointment for first-time visits. Open counseling times are Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, or Friday from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. or Thursday from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. Syracuse is located at 1903 West Michigan Avenue, Kalamazoo. For more information, please call 269-387-3287 or visit www.wmich.edu/health center.
Welcome back, all y'all wider listeners. This is the Hoodrat Strategist radio program, only on 89.1 WIDR Kalamazoo. Again, if you're new in town, you're a new student, maybe you're a freshman here at Western Michigan University, please sit down around your radio and let me radicalize the living heck out of you. I'm a radical leftist socialist, and I'm telling you the news. Ho-ho. Radical Marxist socialist. I think leftist socialist is kind of redundant. Actually, there are like Nazbols. Anyway, that's getting really into the weeds, I suppose. But let's go ahead and talk about. I said we're going to talk a little bit about Mr. David Koch, who recently passed away. Those of you who don't know, the Koch brothers are some of the most infamous billionaires in America. They've essentially bankrolled the right-wing GOP agenda for decades. Basically took Lewis Powell's little memo and used it as a Bible, a strategic schematic, if you will. And unfortunately, them and their strategy and their billions of dollars have been, as they say in Pokemon, super effective. So I wanted to do a little bit of a deeper dive into just what David Koch's legacy was and kind of the outcomes of what he did. And this is a really good article from The Intercept. I'm actually not a big fan of the headline. It's a little bit more sensational, and honestly, it goes into something a little bit deeper than just a single president. But this part is also true. David Koch's most significant legacy is the election of Donald Trump. This is written by Lee Fang. It was published August 26th. So I'm going to kind of skip around. But again, if you want to read the full article, that's The Intercept. And again, the headline is David Koch's most significant legacy is the election of Donald Trump. David Koch, the fossil fuel industry billionaire who passed away on August 23rd at the age of 79, spent the second half of his life building a political power structure alongside his brother Charles that radically reshaped society and set the conditions for the rise of President Donald Trump. Many obituaries published in recent days examine Koch's history of polluting the environment and political system, how the donor network he helped lead mobilized opposition to addressing climate change, transformed our election laws to allow unlimited secret spending by the very rich, and systemically fought any regulation, labor reform, or tax viewed as a threat to the corporate power elite. Yet Koch's most visible accomplishment is the current occupant of the White House, a legacy left largely unrecognized and one that goes well beyond any other single triumph in his life. The nexus is not readily clear to most, especially given that the two clashed publicly. Trump, for instance, has taken to gleefully ridiculing Koch and his brother as globalists. But in his scorched earth quest for unparalleled influence, Koch, perhaps unwittingly, laid the path for Trump. First, there were obvious efforts made by Koch, though largely ignored by the mainstream press, that directly elected Trump. In 2016, Americans for Prosperity, the Koch's primary vehicle for influence that operates as a privately run political party, hired over 650 staffers, deploying many to battleground states, including Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, and Michigan, to turn out Republican voters. The field staff filled in the gaps left by Trump's chaotic field operation. In Wisconsin alone, Americans for Prosperity staff, equipped with state-of-the-art voter contact technology, made 1.5 million phone calls and knocked on nearly 30,000 doors. Again, this kind of goes back to what I learned a lot in kind of movement politics training. That's kind of like progressive strategies to get a left progressive elected. And they always tell you can either there's two ways to win the election: lots of people or lots of money. And that's again, this really encapsulates that strategy in a nutshell. When you don't have the support of the people, you hire a bunch of people using your money. So it's kind of called astroturfing. Kind of a lot of what went into making the Tea Party look inflated and bigger. But not only does it serve kind of an astroturfing purpose, but again, one of the things that wins elections, as much as people like to, endlessly, football quarterback, but again, one of the things that really wins elections is knocking on doors and making phone calls. And, as we saw, the Clinton campaign effort in a lot of these states was anemic at best. Plus, there was the fact that, a lot of people didn't really trust the Clinton campaign because of not only her record, but also the fact that, they cheated the progressive candidate that got everybody excited. And then, of course, just pretended like nothing happened. Yeah, that made a lot of Americans mad. People generally don't like to be treated like they're stupid. And one thing about Donald Trump, he may be pretty damn dumb himself, but he did not condescend to working class people. He just tried to, split them up into different groups and fan the flames of hate. But no, he did not call working class white people stupid. He did call working class Hispanic people rapists and murderers, and so on and so forth. But again, you knock on a lot of rural white people's doors, make a lot of phone calls. That sticks in people's minds, even more so than all of the abysmal scandals that racked Donald Trump's awful con man campaign. Going on, it says, late in the campaign, the Koch money flowed to television advertisements in the Rust Belt, including the crucial states of Wisconsin and Pennsylvania that hammered Hillary Clinton. Political scientist Thomas Ferguson has persuasively argued that the spending blitz by Republican billionaires, including Koch, in late October and early November was a decisive fact in Clinton's defeat. One thing this article doesn't really talk about, I also point a lot at Robert Mercer. Of course, his unsavory work with Cambridge Analytica has seen the light of day in recent months, but Cambridge Analytica and, of course, good old-fashioned voter suppression. But again, I would say those two billionaires, David Koch and Robert Mercer, were the ones most directly responsible for getting Trump elected. Koch group spent $4.3 million in Wisconsin, eclipsing the $3 million spent by the Clinton campaign. The television ads that sought to simultaneously tear down Democrat Russ Feingold and Clinton pattern repeated in other crucial swing states. It's kind of like that whole... It's why they talk about Nancy Pelosi so much in congressional campaign ads. They want to associate whoever the Republican is running against with the most unpopular Democrat. That can be either like Nancy Pelosi, Hillary Clinton, Chuck Schumer, etc. What's more, over the previous 8 years, the Koch network had plowed tens of millions of dollars into the region with a focus on Wisconsin to transform the state, once a progressive bastion, into a laboratory for the radical right. The network focused carefully on political investments designed to change the power alignment through the upper Midwest. New barriers to voting, dramatic restrictions on labor unions, and investments in a localized conservative voter mobilization apparatus. The states that produced the Electoral College victory over Clinton had been primed for electing a future GOP presidential nominee, and Trump was simply the beneficiary. Yeah, honestly, we talk a lot about how even Trump himself was kind of surprised and somewhat disappointed that he won. And even a lot of people talk about how unexpected it was. Well, even for a lot of Republicans, maybe and a lot of Republicans, especially more centrist Republicans at the time, probably wanted Hillary Clinton to win more. The system they built came back to bite them. The voter suppression and voter turnout system that they had built up was unparalleled. And it's very good at rigging elections in order to make even very stupid reactionary proto-fascist candidates into American presidents. Going on. Over the years, Americans for Prosperity and its affiliated nonprofits continued to battle, and this is going back to the Obama years, battle Obama as the Koch network poured billions into election advocacy and lobbying. Their political rhetoric rarely matched Koch's idealized form of libertarianism about limited government. Money flowed freely to anti-abortion groups as well as anti-Muslim and anti-immigration extremists. Yeah, David Koch, the Koch brothers, were literally funding fascists and fascist ideology that, again, we are seeing the seeds of which bearing much fruit in the years following 2016. But principled laissez-faire activism was never a criterion for receiving Koch money. The assembled speakers at the 2009 Americans for Prosperity convention were quick to form the basis of Trump's inner circle. Newt Gingrich, who helped open the event, was the first major figure from the GOP establishment to endorse Trump's bid for the Republican nomination. Larry Kudlow, another speaker at the event, is now in the executive office shaping Trump's economic policies. Trump himself appeared at Americans for Prosperity events as early as 2014. The permanent political machine gainfully employed by Koch to fan the flames of the Tea Party movement seamlessly transitioned into Trump's orbit. Lewandowski would later serve as Trump's presidential campaign manager. Alan Cobb, the vice president of Americans for Prosperity, became a senior advisor to the Trump election effort. Mark Short, who later became Trump's liaison to Congress, previously worked as president of Freedom Partners, Koch's central clearinghouse for doling out political grants. Donald McGahn, Koch's campaign operation lawyer, became Trump's campaign and White House attorney. And Mark Block, a key Americans for Prosperity official in Wisconsin, seen in the C-SPAN video reporting on the success of the growing chapter in mobilizing anti-Obama demonstrations, was the first to introduce Cambridge Analytica's services to Steve Bannon, according to a whistleblower account. No wonder then that much of Trump's administration has been hyper-focused on the policy goals of the Koch network: deregulation, tax cuts, and business-friendly judges. A memo circulated to the Koch donor network last year compiled a laundry list of environmental and judicial victories scored through the administration, including leaving the Paris Climate Agreement and the appointment of Justice Neil Gorsuch to the Supreme Court. Here's just a few examples of what Americans for Prosperity has done through their counter-revolutionary organizing. In Washington, D.C., as the vote on the Affordable Care Act neared, Americans for Prosperity provided free buses, food, and other arrangements for thousands of demonstrators to storm Capitol Hill. When lawmakers saw hundreds of rowdy protesters storm the halls in opposition to the vote, few were aware that a single billionaire had paid their way. Again, astroturfing. In other instances, the propaganda techniques bordered on comical. One television advertisement featured an actor who played Carlton the eco-hypocrite, who sought action on global warming only to enrich himself and cause massive unemployment. Another Americans for Prosperity campaign depicted the Environmental Protection Agency's climate policies represented as a Big Brother-style power grab, falsely claiming that carbon cops would arrest Americans and regulate churches under the guise of combating global warming. The campaign toured throughout the country with free food and an inflatable bounce house for children shaped as a giant green police car to illustrate the point. Other advocacy efforts worked to grow the dark underbelly of American paranoia. American Future Fund was one of several groups that received over $10 million in 2010 from Koch-financed nonprofits to run attack ads, including spots that spread the bigoted lie that a victory mosque was planned near the future World Trade Center. In the end, media attention did little to dim Koch's prospects for power. In the midterm elections that year, Koch's advocacy machine helped deliver 63 House seats in the House of Representatives, including Perillo's seat, the entire state government in Wisconsin, and hundreds of other elections across the country into Republican hands in one of the greatest election routes in American history. The move to extremism was rewarded with raw power, with Koch as the kingmaker. And just to put a pin on the whole climate angle, this was evil. People who poo-poo the idea that, we shouldn't take delight in the death of this man. This man caused incredible damage in his life. His money poisoned political discourse and paved the way for climate denial to be a mainstream idea at American kitchen tables. Every time your racist uncle brings up some point about how climate change is fake news, or some study showed that, car exhaust isn't that bad, or, I read this study that said this, that. You can blame David Koch. May he rest in... trying to think of an appropriate word. Well, I hope the climate down in hell is doing him wonders. So with that, I'm going to take a quick little break and rest my voice. I think what we'll do next, let's go ahead. We're going to play a clip from Democracy Now! As soon as I can go ahead and cue it up. But I'll give you a little bit of a primer on what it's all about. So recently, Johnson & Johnson, state of Oklahoma, was successfully sued. It's a pretty paltry sum, to be completely honest, but that being said, I think it's still a very important story to talk about. Let's see, where is it here? I usually have it in here. Okay. Well, actually, I gotta find it and pull it up. But my basic take on it, the good and the bad, it sets a very important precedent that we can actually hold corporations like Johnson & Johnson financially responsible for the human misery that they have created. However, again, as they'll say in here in this report, it was originally supposed to be $17 billion. Now they're asking for $572 million, which for Johnson & Johnson might as well be a parking ticket. So let's go ahead. I'll rest my voice a little bit, and you can hear Democracy Now! Talking about this very critical and important story.
$572 million for contributing to Oklahoma's opioid crisis. Oklahoma District Judge Thad Bachman announced the ruling Monday.
The opioid crisis is an imminent danger and menace to Oklahomans. My judgment includes findings of fact and conclusions of law that the state met its burden, that the defendants, Janssen and Johnson & Johnson's misleading marketing and promotion of opioids created a nuisance as defined by 50 OS Section 1, including a finding that those actions compromised the health and safety of thousands of Oklahomans. Specifically, defendants caused an opioid crisis that is evidenced by increased rates of addiction, overdose deaths, and neonatal abstinence syndrome in Oklahoma. This is a temporary public nuisance that can be abated, and the proper remedy for public nuisance is equitable abatement. As I just stated, the opioid crisis has ravaged the state of Oklahoma. It must be abated immediately. For this reason, I am entering an abatement plan that consists of costs totaling $572,102,028 to immediately remediate the nuisance.
Oklahoma Judge Thad Balkman speaking Monday. Johnson & Johnson has vowed to appeal the ruling. This marks the first time a drug company has been held responsible for the opioid crisis, which has led to more than 400,000 overdose deaths since 1999. According to court documents, more than 6,000 people have died of painkiller overdoses in Oklahoma alone. The state of Oklahoma had sought a $17 billion judgment, but Oklahoma Attorney General Mike Hunter still celebrated the ruling.
Today, Judge Bachman has affirmed our position that Johnson & Johnson, motivated by greed and avarice, is responsible for the opioid epidemic in our state. Johnson & Johnson will finally be held accountable for thousands of deaths and addiction caused by their activities. There is no question in my mind that we had to bring this case, that it had to be tried, that these facts had to see sunlight. That's been accomplished here. And at the end of the day, you can't sit in a corporate suite somewhere for the last 20 years and oversupply the country. 10 times more of this drug was coming in, and then you had concomitantly 15 times more people dying from opioid overdoses. So there's no question in my mind that these companies knew what was going on at the highest level. They just couldn't quit making money from it, and that's why they're responsible.
The Oklahoma ruling sets the stage for the more than 40 states that are currently pursuing similar claims against the pharmaceutical industry, lawsuits targeting drug makers and distributors. A massive federal lawsuit brought by almost 2,000 cities, counties, and Native American tribes is scheduled to begin in October in Cleveland. Well, for more, we go to San Francisco, California, where we're joined by Julia Lurie, a senior reporter at Mother Jones. Her new article, Johnson & Johnson was just found liable for fueling the opioid epidemic in a historic trial. Julia Lurie, welcome to Democracy Now! You've been following this trial very closely. Talk about the significance of the ruling.
So this ruling is huge. This is the first time that a case like this has gone to trial. And, honestly, we didn't really know what was going to happen. There's not really a precedent for this, for a pharmaceutical company being held liable for its role in this crisis. So, you had all of this evidence that was being put out over the past several weeks. And still, we didn't really know how the judge was going to come down. And so the news yesterday that the state was going to be receiving millions of dollars from Johnson & Johnson was really impressive. And at the same time, the state had requested a lot more money. So it's definitely, I think, a mixed bag. But overall, it definitely sets the tone for future cases like this, of which there will be many.
Now, it's not as if this was the only drug company that contributed to the opioid crisis, but two other companies, Purdue Pharma and Teva, had settled with Oklahoma before at less than well under half the amount that this judge has now found Johnson & Johnson liable for.
Correct. So Johnson & Johnson was basically making the gamble that the state could not find a single company, namely Johnson & Johnson, liable for the entirety of the opioid crisis. That their role was so minuscule that they would not be found responsible. And that strategy really ended up backfiring because, as you said, they ended up paying far more than Purdue and Teva combined.
On Monday, Johnson & Johnson's attorney, Sabrina Strong, vowed to appeal the ruling.
We have sympathy for all who suffer from substance abuse. But Johnson & Johnson did not cause the opioid abuse crisis here in Oklahoma or anywhere in this country. We do not believe that the facts or the law supports the decision today. We have many strong grounds for appeal, and we intend to pursue those vigorously.
That's Johnson & Johnson's attorney, Sabrina Strong, vowing to appeal the ruling. Julia Lurie, one of the main arguments of Johnson & Johnson is, we didn't prescribe these drugs, doctors did.
That's true, and at the same time, Johnson & Johnson played a big role in getting those doctors to prescribe these drugs. So what we now know from the evidence that was laid out in this trial was that Johnson & Johnson was a pharmaceutical company that went about a massive and misleading and false advertising, effectively a marketing campaign, in which they had sales representatives target high-volume prescribers, so doctors that they knew would be amenable to prescribing more and more opioids, and encouraging those doctors to prescribe higher doses of opioids, and also trying to convince folks, doctors and patients alike, that these were safe and effective drugs, that addiction was not a problem, that it was perfectly fine to take them at high doses for long periods of time. You know, one of the things that came out over the course of this trial was that Johnson & Johnson representatives, sales representatives, made, I think it was 150,000 calls just across the state of Oklahoma, sales calls to doctors, pushing them to prescribe these opioids. And so, you know, it's correct that ultimately the doctors are the ones that are prescribing these drugs. However, Johnson & Johnson played a huge role in influencing those doctors. And another thing that we know that Johnson & Johnson did was support the pain patients, the advocacy groups specifically that were advocating on behalf of pain patients. You know, when a message is coming from a doctor or from a patient advocacy group, it seems much more trustworthy than a message coming from a pharmaceutical company. So we know that they really leveraged, you know, those messaging techniques, and as a result, the prescribing of opioids in Oklahoma and really across the country skyrocketed.
Oklahoma also argued that Johnson & Johnson targeted young children in its efforts to expand the opioid market. The state compared the company's recruiting tactics to those of the tobacco industry. Julia, tell us more.
So it seems like there was no population that was sort of off limits for Johnson & Johnson to basically push these opioids onto. And, you know, from a marketing perspective, it makes sense. If you can get more people hooked on these drugs, especially people from a younger age, then you'll have, you know, lifetime customers, as it were. However, you know, as we know, these drugs are extraordinarily addictive, and there are all sorts of negative effects to prescribing these drugs. So, you know, we have all this marketing information now that if you were just taking an economic perspective, you would say, oh yeah, that makes sense. Target as many different populations as you can. Target people with cancer pain, target people with non-cancer pain, target old people, target young people. And in reality, that kind of targeting has really devastating consequences.
You wrote a piece not a little while ago called Inside Johnson & Johnson's Quiet Domination of the Opioid Market. Explain how key Johnson & Johnson was and how this market and the epidemic developed simultaneously. How did they do it? There's so much that is not known about the way these companies operate with their secret documents that now come out in trial.
Sure. So the company's role was really multi-pronged. So on the one hand, they had their own opioid products that they were selling and they were marketing, and they had a whole sales force of folks who were going to doctors and encouraging doctors to prescribe those medications. But also, and this is something that I think that most people don't know about Johnson & Johnson. Johnson & Johnson had two subsidiaries that were responsible for manufacturing the majority of active ingredients in opioids that were marketed and sold in the United States, not just Johnson & Johnson opioids, but all sorts of opioids. So The way that they did this was back in the 90s, they had developed this high thebaine poppy. Thebaine is a type of opioid that's used in a lot of painkillers. And back in the 90s, they were able to connect with what is now Purdue Pharma to basically say, look, we have all these poppies, we have this active ingredient, we can help you to make this opioid painkiller, and we can supply as much of it as you want. And over the years, Johnson & Johnson subsidiaries ended up providing pharmaceutical companies across the country with 60% of the active ingredients that are in painkillers. So, on the one hand, you have Johnson & Johnson with its own painkillers and with its own sales force, but they also were quietly playing this really massive role in providing the entirety of the United States and its pharmaceutical companies with the active ingredients that ended up in painkillers and medicine cabinets all over the country.
So I think with that, we'll kind of cut it there. But again, some really good information about Johnson & Johnson's role in the opioid epidemic and the implications of what it means for a corporation to be held directly responsible for it. Again, you can find the full clip of that story on Democracy Now's website. The headline: "This ruling is huge. Johnson & Johnson ordered to pay $572 million for fueling opioid epidemic." All right, so with that, let's go ahead and go to a quick little break. Y'all listening to the Hoodrat Strategist radio program only on 89.1 WIDR Kalamazoo, your only source for political revolution. Hello, everyone. We are back. This is the Hoodrat Strategist radio program, only on 89.1 WIDR Kalamazoo. So, want to talk about this news story. We've got kind of a gentrification double feature that I wanted to do a little bit of analysis about. So, there's an article that recently dropped on MLive, and it was about how Kalamazoo area ranked among least expensive to live for professionals. Oh boy, yeah. And there's a lot of built-in kind of upwardly mobile bias. Let's call it that. Just in the way this article was pitched. I guess the kind of good news about it, it's the Kalamazoo is ranked the third least expensive place to live in the second quarter to 2019 cost of living index based on after-tax costs for professional managerial standard of living. I guess like what is really, here's what makes this such a bad take for me. The professional managerial class, they seem to be doing quite all right as far as finding housing and as far as, their quality of life goes. But the article goes on to talk about, again, specifically specifically catered to how this is such a great place to live for upwardly mobile professionals. Well, what about just regular working class people? People who I wanted to just kind of read briefly. This is my friend Matt Smith. He's a historian down at the KPL, but he had a very good kind of, not just a sharp and a little bit snarky take on it, but one that is informed by deep analysis and a knowledge of history. He writes, the all-white Upjohn Institute staff is coming up with and commenting on some interesting studies that justify the current development orgasm happening in Kalamazoo. That's timely. Racist ideas, even colorblind economic trickle-down ideas, are simply there to justify the racist policy that has already been instituted, referring to the Foundation for Excellence. Dress it up, make it look pretty. We got the racist policy, now we get the justifications for that policy. Here we have a status quo, light on facts, a superficial article that completely disregards the actual incomes of Kalamazooans living here right now. It's basically an advertisement that says, we're doing pretty good. Because the whole point of the article is to justify the whole point of development, attracting young professionals to a developing city. A city not creating policies that would serve the current residents who live here. Quoted from the article, Kalamazoo's score for housing, 53.3, is the lowest on the list, meaning the area has the least expensive housing of any of the places surveyed. And yet still, somehow, 30% of Kalamazooan residents are paying more than half their income on housing, which would equate to building over 4,000 more affordable housing units just to accommodate those 30% of people. Doesn't matter how relatively low the rent or mortgage is compared to other cities if residents still can't afford it. Again, a lot of people rave about the cost of living in Kalamazoo, but that's also kept pace with the low pay that working class people in the city make. Keep in mind, nobody's made a big push in Kalamazoo for $15 an hour or $16 an hour. A lot of average working people usually make between $9 to $12 an hour. I make about $11.50, I believe, maybe $11.80 personally. As he goes on to say, having inexpensive housing is a benefit because more people can own their own homes, Ebert said. As Matt points out, the black home ownership rate in Kalamazoo today is only 36%. The article, of course, doesn't mention that. Also, what that means is we can attract professionals in a national market. Matt goes on to say that's the whole point. Attracting new people so we don't have to take care of people who currently live here. Don't blink. In 20 years, those young professionals will be on East Ransom. Hip, revitalized, rejuvenated, funky, cleaned up. Nothing was there, after all, respecting the history of buildings, while the people with median incomes of $25,000 will be forced to move out. Further and further and further. The forever conjoined twins of racism and capitalism. As quoted from Ibram Kendi, who's a great writer, by the way. What we need now is anti-racist power, anti-racist candidates, and anti-racist people to create anti-racist policies, justified by anti-racist ideas and anti-racist economics that serves most people. That's the way forward if we want to lift up ordinary people in Kalamazoo. Couldn't agree more, Matt. And again, some people act like I'm some kind of loon or conspiracy theorist when I say, like, well, the city's main strategy is to get upwardly mobile wealthy people into the city, up the tax base, which ends up, inevitably displacing people who live here in the city. I see this very concretely as a resident of the Vine neighborhood, especially on the edges close to downtown. We see more and more houses and properties being bought up by property management companies, turning around and trying to basically sell them to these upwardly mobile young professionals. Parts of the north side, parts of Edison. We are seeing the first spurts of gentrification in this city. And, as an organizer, it's something that is every working class neighborhood is in fear of it, fear of being displaced. Again, it's our home, and, we don't want it being gobbled up by these property developers. Now, here's another thing that I've seen making the rounds, kind of in a similar vein. So, those apartments going up right over on the corner of South Rose and Cedar? Yeah, about those. City talks a lot about affordable housing and trying to make affordable housing downtown. I remember a building just a little bit down the street from there, the old firehouse that needs to be torn down and replaced. The biggest demand at the public meeting: affordable apartments, affordable housing downtown. Well, let's see how affordable the residences are. Oh, wow. Look at this picture. It looks so nice. 400 South Rose Street. Wow. Apply now. 1 applicant. Apply now. 2 applicants. Oh, boy. Studio apartments, 1 bedrooms, and 2-bedroom apartments. Oh, and let's see. A lot of talk about affordable housing. Let's see. You get a 2-bedroom starting at $1,575 a month. You can get a 1-bedroom starting at $1,200 a month. And you can get a studio apartment at $971 a month. Again, who are these new apartments supposed to be for? Exactly. Only to people who see $971 a month as affordable. And I want to live so close to downtown, baby. Oh yeah, we'll be so close to all the bars, all the nice little microbreweries, and all of the nice hip venues that all of the working class people from the Edison, from the Vine neighborhood, from the Northside neighborhood keep running with their sweat and tears. I always tell people, it's particularly I live in the Vine neighborhood. We're the ones who cook all your meals downtown. The people who want to live in these ritzy apartments will probably be visiting. So let's just break this down a little bit. Let's use my own. So here's my typical paycheck. My normal schedule, if I don't pick up overtime, work 35 hours a week. Kind of have to pick up overtime, really, to keep the bills paid. But let's just stick it at that. $35 or not $35 a week. Thank goodness. 35 hours a week. So 35 hours a week, I make approximately $11.50. My paychecks, if I work no overtime, come out to about $580 a month. $580 a month. That means I take home on a month that I don't, take any overtime. I take home about $1,160 a month. So, a studio apartment at the residences, at my current level of income, would cost me about 90%. 85 to 90% of my current income. Yes. Affordable to whom, indeed? And the main problem is, while they're building these up in earnest, these units that are explicitly geared to a wealthier upper crust crowd, don't forget about the Exchange building, the moves to make affordable housing are a pittance. As Matt Smith so eloquently pointed out, we need at least 4,000 units to get started. And that's not even to speak about, influx of people coming to the city in the coming years. But we're getting places that offer affordable rates. Think of the complex on Harrison. It's basically like an income-tiered apartment complex. There's 14 units at an affordable rate, a rate that would not send me to the poorhouse personally. 14. We need 4,000. There's some small, there's a tiny house community going up in the north side, specifically to help houseless folks. Can't remember exactly how many units. I think about 100 or so. There's some really good people working on that. people putting in the work. Again, we need 4,000. The city won't put any resources into building up affordable housing, but they will roll out the red carpet for developments like this that are putting $971 studio apartments literally right across the street from a working class neighborhood, i.e. the Vine. Yep. And if you don't think gentrification is happening in Kalamazoo, well, I'd almost say the proof is in the pudding with that one. So we're going to take a quick little break. Y'all listen to the Hoodrat Strategist radio program only on 89.1 WIDR Kalamazoo, your only source for political revolution. Hello, ladies, gentlemen, vadies, and gentle them, and everyone in between. So, we just wrapped up, talk a little bit about gentrification. Oh, what a fun topic that is. Yes. So, we're going to be joined in just a few minutes by a dear member of the community, makes rad music, and is just a radical person in general. Excuse me. But first, actually, this ties into a story over the weekend, and we've talked about these knuckleheads before on the show. There was a fascist spotting, over at Bell's over the weekend. Specifically Saturday, a few of them came by wearing some lovely stylish T-shirts. Something about like how much something about ooh boo Antifa, because like anti-fascists are the real fascists, of course. And summarily, from what I was able to dig up, Bell's put out a statement about it. Larry Bell in particular, basically saying they do not want this group out here. They were actually a few months ago. We talked about this on the show before. They popped up over at Shakespeare's in Louis, and there wasn't really as much of a public backlash. I feel like the public, what's the word I'm looking for? The people are more aware of who the Proud Boys are, especially in the last few months than they used to be, and just what they represent and what their despicable politics are. They did end up getting kicked out of, I believe, Shakes, but then it ended up at Louis, and it's very important for local businesses to take a stand against fascism, as well as local community members who also take a stand against these fascist elements trying to come into our city. Of course, fascists are a cowardly and bullying lot, and sometimes there is pushback. And with that in mind, we're actually joined now by a very special guest. Megan Dooley is joining us on the show. You've probably heard her on Wider before. She's a very well-known local musician. Unfortunately, you've recently ran into some harassment from these knuckleheads, and wanted to invite you on the show to maybe like talk a little bit about it, put the word out, as it were. But first, let's just kind of start at the beginning. Like, how did you end up getting on these goons' radar, as it were?
Oh, well, it's a bit of a story. Hey, everybody, how's it going? Very happy to be on the Hoodrat Strategist. I am a dear and near listener and follower.
Oh, thank you. Oh, that touches me in the cockles of my radical heart.
It was important, us radicals to stick together, I suppose. Anyway, I don't feel like this is so unfortunate of an event if it's helping get some more attention and more awareness of what is actually happening with these guys and with their beliefs.
That's very true. Again, I think these fools kind of shoot themselves in the foot by coming into, especially we joke a lot on the show about how Kalamazoo, it's like socially Bernie Sanders, but economically Reagan. But I think there are certain things. Yeah. There are certain things the community really doesn't tolerate. So I actually did want some clarification myself. So it was the Proud Boys specifically who harassed you. Did it have something to do with their appearance at Bell's?
Okay, so yes. My boyfriend Johnny and I were out on our motorcycles enjoying a lovely Saturday afternoon. It was beautiful outside. And he was perusing Facebook, and he saw a post from a friend saying that there were Proud Boys at Bell's. And we didn't have anything else going on, so we're like, hey, let's ride down to Bell's and see if we can keep an eye on whatever this is. Mm-hmm. So we showed up, and a lot of employees were really grateful that people came out. They were really freaked out. They were really scared. We were talking with Bell's management. We didn't want a scene. We didn't want to give them the attention that they so clearly had come out to get that day, because they're known to try and incite riots and all sorts of stuff.
They'll do, we actually talked about this on the show the other week. A lot of fascists will incite you to violence so that they can basically video record it and then spin the narrative and be like, oh, look at these violent leftists.
Yeah. They like to do this thing where they play the the BA dude and then turn around and play the victim, which is such a cute dichotomy, if you ask me. It's just, I mean, they seem more bored than anything.
Yeah, I mean, as a lot of the right-wing trolls who frequent my political pages, it's just I think these people need a different hobby. I don't know.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. So, we kept an eye on them at Bell's. We had some friends come out and join us. There was about, I think, 6 of us total. And we followed them as they left. And we followed them to their car. I wanted to take pictures of their faces and their license plates. And, because if you're going to spread propaganda out in public, then let me help you.
Yeah,
Here you go, bud.
And to be clear, like a lot of times these folks, I mean, we joke, but some of these folks can be dangerous, and they'll like, or they'll vandalize stuff. I know there was some hate speech that got spray painted after their recent appearance up at a playground on the north side.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
I didn't hear about that.
Can't connect it one to one. There's not like.
But the timing is too appropriate.
Yeah.
There's been a lot of that happening, and these guys seem to work like that. Very subversive, enough but not enough. I guess they're trying to play it safe because they understand that this type of conduct is not welcome in today's society. If you have to be that discreet about your ideologies, chances are they're probably dangerous towards a marginalized group of people and should be dealt with appropriately as far as bringing it to the public's knowledge, staying aware, and staying connected within our community so we can fight against hate like that.
Yeah. So, what was the response? Because I noticed they decided to start harassing you, and I know like they're threatening to come to your show tomorrow. Like, what have you been dealing with on that end? If you don't want to go too much into that, that's fine. I think it's just. It's kind of important to just let people know, this is kind of what these goons are up to.
Yeah. It's just really minor harassment, just some random Facebook messages and some emails and some voicemails and nothing overly creepy or scary. I mean, it's more entertaining than anything. They seemed very proud of themselves for finding my publicly listed phone number on Facebook.
Yeah.
But, yeah, I mean, I put their faces and stuff up on the internet, and so people on their side, of course, were not happy about that. I don't know why. It's public information.
Just pro tip for any fascists listening to the show: doxing doesn't work if you're already a public figure. So somebody was like, this guy is a leftist. It's like, yeah, I'm literally the chair of the Socialist Party.
Yeah.
But,
okay.
Example, but yeah.
We don't have to hide because we're not trying to hurt anybody.
Yeah. Exactly.
So that's been fun. It's been a week.
Yeah. But I am really sorry that you had to deal with that. It is in any degree. It is stressful. If really more obnoxious than anything else.
It is. That's definitely how I put it. It's been pretty obnoxious. But I'm grateful that it came. I mean, none of this was intentional, but I'm grateful that it's shining a light on some things that maybe are happening under the radar.
I was really, one, shout out to WMUK for, doing some coverage about it. Because, we talk about these kind of issues week in and week out, but it's kind of hard for the more mainstream press to really acknowledge, particularly groups like the Proud Boys that do a lot to, spur their public image. It's like, oh, we're not a hate group. We just think Western civilization is superior and anybody else should be assimilated.
And it's not even a politics issue at the heart of it. I mean, these guys they have superiority complexes with a large, healthy dose of narcissism, and the time to screw with the rest of us, I guess, who were just trying to lead normal lives.
But yeah, but no, I think it literally. I think it brings that knowledge to people who traditionally, again, if you're like us, you listen to your young leftists, you know about these new hate groups out there. There's a lot of older folks, a lot of middle class folks, even a lot of working people around town who maybe are not so aware of what these groups are and what they're actually about. So yeah, again, thank you for kind of using this obnoxious harassment to shine a spotlight on it in venues and areas that maybe I I in particular wouldn't have traditional access to, but also like a lot of the people in our community wouldn't. So
yeah, my pleasure. Honestly, like I said, this wasn't intentional. I just wanted to go out there and make people I know feel safe, feel safer, because this community we're close. We take care of each other, and we're definitely not about to let people with that kind of ideology intimidate any of us.
Yep. Well, what's particularly interesting to me is, I wonder. So one of the things they threatened to like come to. So you're having a show tomorrow at O'Duffy's.
Yeah.
And what's so funny to me about that is like these people. It's like I always do my research before I say anything, and there's like these guys. It's like that the Vine neighborhood in particular is just awash with anti-fascist graffiti tags and stuff like that. So
it's the perfect place for them to try and mess with us. I guess. Yeah. I mean, Jamie Kavanaugh, owner and operator of O'Duffy's, is amazing. We chatted over the phone today, and his official stance is everybody's welcome at O'Duffy's except for white supremacists and a-holes.
There you go. Good.
And we're going to have a good time tomorrow night. We just, they're threatening to come to my show, which is cool because I have so much experience dealing with dumb hecklers. I just am very excited.
Yep. I know that there's been a lot of people just offering support, just offering to be there. What would you tell folks about people who are worried about like them showing up, or people who just want to be there in solidarity? What is your main ask? My best guess is they're probably not going to show up, but they could. And what would you want to have happen?
I'm about 50-50 on whether or not they're actually going to show up. I think maybe this has gotten enough traction for them to take advantage of the attention, so they might show up.
Also true.
So there's that. The most important thing for me is that everybody knows that this is about showing a presence of love. It's not about violence on either side, please. The guys that we confronted at Bell's didn't threaten us in any way. Nobody threatened anybody, but we told them that, what they were doing wasn't okay, and what they were doing wasn't welcome here. And, nobody has to do anything. You don't even have to say anything, but if you're just there calmly, presently, showing that we don't want that here.
Well, I think what y'all did at Bell's is a really good example, and I think this is a good abject lesson. Obviously we're not pacifists, but there's a very specific reason and strategic reason in particular to ever exercise violence. It always has to be about self-defense. I've been at rallies and stuff. I remember Richard Spencer showing up. The reason you're there ostensibly is to provide self-defense to marginalized groups that are out there protesting, and sometimes that can mean fists. But fact of the matter, you're in a situation where they're outnumbered. They're coming into basically our community to try to clown around or whatever.
They're trying to get a response out of us.
Yes, they're trying to get a response out of us,
and we can give them a response.
Yeah.
It's just got to be a calm, focused response that involves us just being very clear about the fact that they're not welcome here.
Yeah, exactly. I think that was a really important thing to bring up, because I know a lot. Everybody's tense right now. I mean, the rainforest is burning down. There's fascism everywhere.
Did you see what Bolsonaro said today? He's like, I won't save the Amazon unless Macron apologizes to me.
Man.
I think everybody needs a whole big dose of it's not just about you.
Well, I hope he's got a seat waiting for him right next to David Koch.
I was just about to make that joke. Yes.
What's the climate like down there, buddy? Oh, yeah. But I think it's important to bring up, because it's they provide people like that. It would be very easy to let yourself get just with everything else going on. But again, especially that's part of their strategy. That's what they want. They would probably love it if somebody smacked them on camera so that they can turn around and be like, see what these people did?
Oh, they're terrible.
Antifas. Yeah. Retweet me, Mr. President.
an advisor to the president is actually supposedly openly one of these Proud Boys. So,
That's not very surprising.
Come on, guys. Is that a coincidence? Is it? Is it?
Is it?
Really?
Yeah. Oh, it is. So I guess really anything else you'd like to discuss while you're on, got the platform on the show here. I can't really think of too many other things I wanted to ask other than so when does your show start tomorrow?
We're at O'Duffy's from 8 to 10. I can guarantee that there will be ukuleles and kazoos, and I'll be whistling, and we'll have a lot of friends down there having a good time drinking in the name of love. So
yeah. I'll be down there myself, and I'll be enjoying some good music, probably having Guinness, taking a night off of all the radical shenanigans to go see some good music and stand in solidarity. And again, no, I can't make direct asks on the show or anything, but again, good beer, good music, and a chance to stand up against some fascist buttholes potentially. So,
thank you so much for having me.
Thank you, Megan, for taking time to come on the show. I think with that, we'll go ahead and do a little break. We've got a few more updates on the show, and probably wrap it up around 7:45, 7:50. Y'all listening to the Hoodrat Strategist radio program only on 89.1 WIDR Kalamazoo, your only source for political revolution.
According to Osterberg's theory of college radio, if you have 10,000 kids, man, going to a college, and there's one free station, it's not going to be divided between the use of all the kids. There's going to be one snot, the most obnoxious, grasping person in the school is going to figure out a way to get a hold of those toys, And so you generally meet, they're pretty twerpy, but on the other hand, I like the kids who listen to them.
WIDR, Kalamazoo, your exception to Osterberg's theory.
You find they don't understand you?
Yeah.
You think you're normal?
I've been misunderstood. But long enough now.
But we understand you, Iggy. We understand you. WIDR.
Voting is important. From deciding Kalamazoo's best drunk food to picking the fan favorite for Wider's Battle of the Bands, voting allows people to voice their opinions and change their world. To vote for offices such as mayors, senators, and the president takes a little more than a link to a Google Forms survey. Before you vote, you have to register. This can be done in person, by mail, and in many states, online. For more information, you can point your favorite web browser to vote.gov.
Hello, welcome back. This is the Hoodrat Strategist radio program, only on 89.1 WIDR Kalamazoo. So, again, want to do a quick, well, not so quick, I guess, but we are going to do an update story we talked about last week. The Amazon rainforest is on fire, and human beings set it for money. And again, people wonder why I don't like capitalism. Anyway. I'm going to read a little bit from this article, and then a really sad post, unfortunately, but it's important to talk about. So here's what happened. The G7 summit offered aid to Brazil to help put out the fires in the Amazon rainforest. They offered $22 million. Now, before we talk about how awful Jair Bolsonaro is, let's just talk about what a slap in the face this is to everybody, future generations. They offered them less money than it costs to make an Adam Sandler comedy. Less money. Well, there's been memes rolling around the internet of just like crappy movies that cost more to make than the money that the G7, the 7 richest countries in the world, offered to preserve the lungs of the planet. Again, Amazon rainforest is basically the closest thing our planet has to a life insurance plan, and a fascist capitalist is burning it down to own the libs and to raise cattle. So here was fascist President Jair Bolsonaro's response. Brazilian officials say the government will reject more than $22 million pledged at the G7 summit in Biarritz to help fight raging Amazon wildfires. And this is from The Independent in the UK. Emmanuel Macron announced on Monday that the funding would be immediately released and could be spent on more firefighting plane sorties to curb record blazes in the rainforest that have alarmed environmentalists. Again, $22 million in the scheme of things, drop in the bucket. Brazil did not immediately provide a reason for refusing the money, but its president, Jair Bolsonaro, has previously accused Mr. Macron of adopting a colonialist mindset at the summit of leading development. Oh man, this is the worst kind of like appropriation. Bolsonaro, a capitalist fascist, is now trying to call centrists who are offering too little money to effectively put out the fires in the Amazon colonizers for trying to preserve the ecology and what's really written between the lines here, defend the indigenous people who live in the Amazon rainforest. I don't know how much of the G7 summit is actually thinking about that, but it shows a lot of gall for a fascist president to accuse the French of being colonizers while actively destroying and murdering its own indigenous population. Anyway, Mr. Bolsonaro's chief of staff, Onyx Lorenzoni, told the G1 News website that we appreciate the offer, but maybe those resources are more relevant to reforest Europe. After a continuation of the acrimonious spat between France and Brazil that threatened to overshadow the 3-day summit, Mr. Lorenzoni suggested the aid was hypocritical after the April fire at Paris. This is the first time I'm reading this article. This is I kind of skimmed it earlier. This is ridiculous. not really. Our president is Trump, so this is really par for the course, but God, it's so scary. It is so scary that idiots like this are responsible for, here, the world's largest supplier of nuclear weapons, or in Brazil, the world's largest supplier of oxygen, which all of us really need to breathe. And again, the trees create oxygen and take in CO2. So again, without the rainforest, it's been projected if another fifth of it burns down, it's basically game over, and its ability to slow down the greenhouse feedback loop will be irreparably damaged. Brazil's environmental minister had initially welcomed the offer of funds from the G7, as well as a separate $10 million pledge from the UK and $9 million from Canada. Other groups have also offered support for the Earth's largest greenhouse gas sink. Earth Alliance, a new environmental foundation backed by Leonardo DiCaprio, is pledging $5 million in aid, saying the Amazon is one of the best defenses against climate change. It appears the change of heart came after Mr. Bolsonaro met with his ministers late on Monday. The Brazilian president, who previously claimed without evidence that NGOs may have started the fires in order to discredit his government, suggested the West was trying to gain access to his country's natural resources. Look, does anyone help anyone without something in return? What have they wanted there for so long? It's using... Man, this guy, he reminds me so much of Trump. He's using legitimate grievances to blame the wrong people while... using his position of power to destroy the environment for economic gain. And if you want to read the full article, honestly, I don't know if I can read much more of it. This is just so depressing and enraging. It's The Independent, Amazon fires, Brazil to reject G7 aid after Bolsonaro rages at colonialist leaders. It was written by Adam Withall one day ago. I wanted to read something. This is from somebody who actually lives in Brazil, and I wanted to make sure that a local perspective was put in here. So this is a post that's been kind of making the rounds lately. Hold on. So here's what happened. The studio computer isn't loading it up, so I'm pulling it up on my personal phone here. So give me just a second. Sorry about that, y'all. All right. So, okay, here's what it says. I am Brazilian, and by reading all the posts here from people abroad, it becomes very interesting to observe how hard it is for one to truly grasp what really is going on in another country. The damage is irreparable. The rainforest started being formed 10 million years ago. For anyone who has ever set foot in a jungle, you understand immediately that you do not get it back by simply planting trees. Ever. It is an absolute complex biome. The act was criminally perpetrated by farmers from the agribusiness in an attempt to get the fascist president's attention. They named the day Dia de Fogo, Fire Day. This would be the equivalent of MAGA hat wearing people burning down Yosemite National Forest in order to, get a retweet from Trump. Anyway, they named the day Dia de Fogo and set fire to many areas and preserved indigenous lands as a way to show their eagerness to work and open up vast lands for cattle farms. The pictures pouring in on our social media are beyond heartbreaking. Burnt animals everywhere and roaring flames destroying absolutely everything in their wake. It is so bad that the city of Sao Paulo, thousands of kilometers away, turned into night at 3 p.m. on Monday due to a combination of rain and particles from the burnt forest. The insane president is now trying to incriminate the NGOs who have desperately been working for decades to stop illegal logging, mining, and deforestation, claiming that this was retaliation to the fact that Germany and Norway pulled out their donations this month from the Amazon Fund, as Brazil's environmental politics have been failing to comply with agreed-upon efforts to protect the rainforest. The new government has systematically been undermining every environmental agency, institution, scientist, and NGO committed to protecting our most precious natural resources. I could go on forever. A great majority of the population is devastated and needs international support to help us save what is left from future attacks and exploitation. I honestly don't think the world truly knows how bad it is over here. Spread the word and call for sanctions immediately. Hashtag pray for Amazonia. You know, I bring this up. It's sad news, but it could be one of the most important stories of our lifetime. The rest of that forest burns. Well, we're doomed. To put it lightly. What can we do from here? I honestly am not sure. I don't really have answers to that. I will come back next week. Maybe some affinity groups, mutual aid that we can directly plug into here as Michiganders, people in Kalamazoo. But do your own research. Try to figure out what we can do from here. Because, it's all on the line, folks. As Public Enemy once said, Armageddon, it's been in effect. Come get a late pass. So I think we're going to go ahead and wrap up the show. I want to end today, of course, with our little reading of the activist calendar. Let you know what's going on around town this week. So tomorrow, excuse me. Well, actually, no, there's not much going on tomorrow. Let me skip ahead here. So, not much. I guess there is Climate Change Town Hall Watch Party going on at the Central City Tap House, and that's going to be next Wednesday from 6:30 p.m. to 9:30 p.m. Hey, if you miss the show, can't listen in, that's all right. Keep in mind, we record all of our programs and post them to our YouTube and Facebook page. So, hey, if you want to go down to the Climate Watch Party instead, make your way down there for that. So, I think until next time, I just want to let y'all know, keep on fighting for that revolution solution. Thank you for tuning in, and have a great night.